We continue now at the top of Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph Meseches Yoma. This is Yoma Daf 12a. On the previous Amud, the Gemara had a contradiction whether or not Batei Knasios, whether shuls are metame ben agoyim, do they become tummy with saras? And the Gemara now is offering another answer. Really, you can say that in all situations we're talking about Batei Knasios where there's no living quarters. However, v'had dekrachim, v'had dekfarim. The difference is whether they're in large cities or whether they're in small villages. Rashi over here explains dekrachim shumakam shavakim u'miskabtzim sham imakomos harbe. When it comes to the krachim, it's an area of marketplaces. People come from all over. V'hi asuya lachol. It's made for everyone. Habol ispalel. Everyone who's coming to daven. Ve'ein la bailam yuchadim. There's no designated owners, and therefore there is no tumah in those situations. No tumas saras. But to kvarim, if it's the villages, called bailov nikarim. So then the owners, the people who are in charge, are clear. We know who owns this particular shul. Vareu kabeis hashutfin. It's no different than a house that's owned by partners. And in such a situation, it will become tameh with saras. And so the Gemara asks, "With the krachim ein metame ben agoyim, is it really true that when it comes to these shuls in the large cities, they're not metame ben agoyim?" V'atanya, but we learned in a brisa, achuzaschem. It says in the pasuk achuzaschem metame ben agoyim. If it's a land that's your inheritance, then it's tameh with saras. Ve'ein Yerushalayim metame ben agoyim. But when it comes to Yerushalayim, there's no tumah of tzaras. Rashi over here explains, Ve'ein Yerushalayim metame ben agoyim she'ein achuz alehem. There's no inheritance. Kasavar, this particular Tana holds, lo nischalko l'shevet Yehuda v'Binyamin, that Yerushalayim wasn't given to Shevet Yehuda and Binyamin, ela kol hashvatim shavin ba. Rather, all the shvatim were equal when it came to Yerushalayim. There was no particular shevet that inherited. It wasn't considered an achuza, and therefore Yerushalayim is not metame ben agoyim. And the brisa continues, Amar Rabbi Yehuda says, Ani lo shamati elamakam mikdash belvad. When I heard this halacha, I only heard it with regards to the Beis HaMikdash itself. Rashi over here says, Ani lo shamati kasavar nischalko l'shvatim. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda holds Yerushalayim was given to shvatim, and therefore it is going to be metame ben agoyim, except elamakam mikdash belvad, except the area of the Beis HaMikdash, shekeshakana David es goren me'arona hayavusi gava hakesem mikol shevet v'shevet. When David HaMelech purchased the area for the Beis HaMikdash, he collected money from every shevet. That's joined by all shvatim. Kedamina b'sifri v'shchidas kachim. That's what it says over there in the Sifri and in Shchidas Kachim. So in any case, Rabbi Yehuda says, I heard such a halacha only by the Beis HaMikdash. But the implication of the brisa is, Habate Knasios, Ubate Midrashos Metamin Ben Agoyim. Isn't the implication of the brisa that when it comes to other shuls, when it comes to other Bate Medrash, they are Metamin Ben Agoyim? It's just a question about Yerushalayim, about the Beis HaMikdash. No discussion when it comes to other similar areas like Bate Knasios and Bate Midrashos. V'afa gav dekrachim ninu. And even though they're in large cities, it doesn't seem to make a difference. Still, in all of these situations, the Bate Knasios, Bate Midrashos will be Metamin Ben Agoyim. So the Gemara answers, Ema, rather you should understand this brisa as follows. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, what Rabbi Yehuda actually said was, Ani lo shamati elamakom mekudash bilvad. I only heard this halacha when it came to areas which are sanctified, meaning not only the Beis HaMikdash. Rabbi Yehuda was saying the Beis HaMikdash and anything similar, any area like a Beis HaMikdash, meaning Batei Knasios, Batei Midrashos, all of these areas are not going to be metame ben agoyim. And the Gemara continues, B'mai kamiflagi. What exactly is the machlokas here, Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanim, when it comes to Yerushalayim? The Gemara explains, Tanakama Savar, the Tanakama of the Brisa holds, Yerushalayim lo nischalko l'shvatim. Yerushalayim was not divided among the shvatim. Again, like we said before, it belongs to all of Klal Yisrael, therefore there's no tumah. For Rabbi Yehuda Savar, Rabbi Yehuda holds Yerushalayim nischalko l'shvatim. Yerushalayim was like any other place in Eretz Yisrael. It was divided up among specific shvatim, and therefore there could be tzaras in Yerushalayim. And the Gemara continues, Uvipluksa dahani tanoi. This machlokas is the same machlokas we find in the following brisa. The Tanya, we learned in a brisa, Mahoya bechelko shel Yehuda, what was in the chelik of Yehuda, meaning what area of the Beis HaMikdash belonged to the tribe of Yehuda. Harabayis, Halishkos, Ve'azoros, the Harabayis, the chambers, the courtyards, that all was in the chelik of Yehuda. Umahoya bechelko shel Binyamin, and what was in the chelik of Binyamin? Ulam veheichelu beis kachei hakadosh, and basically the actual building of the Beis HaMikdash, that was part of Shevet Binyamin. Uritzua ha'isa yotza mechelko shel Yehuda v'nechneses lechelko shel Binyamin. There was a small strip of land that went from the portion of Yehuda and it entered into the portion of Binyamin. Ubahaya mizbeach bani. It was on that small strip of land that the mizbeach was built. Uvinyamin hatzadahai mitztara alea levola b'chol yom. And Binyamin HaTzadik, he was sad over this fact. Every single day he wanted to absorb that. Shenamar, like the pasuk says, Chofeif olav kol hayom, he hovers over it the entire day. Lefikach, therefore, Zocha Binyamin HaTzadik. Binyamin HaTzadik was Zocha, he merited V'nase ushpizchan legevura, and he became like a host for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rashi says what that means is ushpizchan shay ha'aron nasan bechelko, that Binyamin was able to have the aron, he was able to host HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak. Shenamar, like the pasuk says, ubein kasef of shachen, HaKadosh Baruch Hu rests between his shoulders, referring to Binyamin. So this was Binyamin's reward. And so this previous brisa says clearly that Yerushalayim was in the Shevet of Yehuda and the Shevet of Binyamin, meaning it was Nischalkel Shvatim. And now the Gemara quotes the opposing view. V'hai Tana Savar, the following Tana holds, Yerushalayim lo Nischalkel Shvatim, that Yerushalayim was not divided among the Shvatim. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, Ein Maskirin Bottom Yerushalayim, you're not allowed to rent out houses in Yerushalayim, Lefi She'ena Shalahen, because it doesn't really belong to them. No one really owns the homes in Yerushalayim, because Yerushalayim belongs to everyone. Again, it's not Nischalkel Shvatim. Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon Omer, Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon says, Af lo mitos, even when it comes to beds, you shouldn't rent out beds. And the brisa continues, Lefikach, therefore, Oros Kodshim, when it comes to the hides of karbonos, Bali ushbizchin notlin osan bizroa, the host would take them by force. In other words, really, when people would be a guest at someone's house, they would generally leave over a gift. Like Oros Kodshim, they had the hides of their karbonos, they would leave it as a gift for their host. But here, you're really not supposed to do that, because you're not supposed to pay and rent out houses in Yerushalayim. So therefore, the host would take it by force. Amar Abaye, and Abaye said, based on this brisa, Shema Minah, we see from this brisa, Orach ara lemishbak inish gulfa umishcha lushbize. It is normal derech eretz. It's proper derech eretz for a person to leave over a jug or to leave over a hide that he shechts, to leave it over in the house of the balabayis. When a person is hosted by somebody else, he should leave this as a little gift. And the Gemara continues, but is it really true that when it comes to the shuls in the villages, there is tumah of tzaras? Vatanya, but we learned in a brisa, la'achuza, it says it's going to be for you for an inheritance, ad sheyichbeshu osa, until you actually conquer the area, you have to conquer it. Kavshu osa, if you conquer the land of Eretz Yisrael, v'lo chalkua l'shvatim, but you don't divide it up among the shvatim, or even chalku l'shvatim, even if you divide it up among the shvatim, v'lo chalku l'beis avos, but you don't divide it among the various families, or chalku l'beis avos, you divide the land among the families. However, v'yein kol echad makir shalo, but people don't recognize what particular area of the land belongs to that particular person. Minayin, how do you know even in those situations? Talmud Lomer, the pasuk says, Uva asher lo habayis. When it comes to tum of tzaras, the person who owns the house comes, meaning it has to be clearly identified who owns what property. That's the only time that we have a situation where tzaras is tameh. Misha miyuchad lo. It has to be designated for him. Yatsuei, it excludes the following, those cases above. Shein miyuchad lo, where it's not designated clearly for a particular person. And so the Gemara is asking, when it comes to shuls in the villages, even if they're in the villages, it's not a clearly identified owner. It should not fall into the category of Misha Miyuchad Lo, and therefore they shouldn't become Tameh. So this is not a good answer. To answer that in the Brisa where it said there is Tumah in the Kfarim isn't going to help us. A shul should not become Tameh at all just for that reason. So the Gemara says, Ella rather Machvarta Kedushanin and Meikara, go with the answers we gave again on the previous summit. Basically, the distinction will be whether there's a base dira or not, as Rashi says, Kedushanin Meikara Di'isbei Dira. If it has a living quarters, that's a different story. Then it could become Tameh with Tzara. If there's no living quarters, then it cannot. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, quoting the Mishnah, Umaskinin lo kohen acher, we designate a second kohen to be a replacement for the kohen gadol. In case the kohen gadol becomes pasul, the second one will serve on Yom Kippur. So the Gemara asks, Pshita, it's obvious. Irabo psul kodem tamin shel shachar. If the first kohen gadol becomes pasul before the korban tamin in the morning, mechan chenoso b'tamin shel shachar. Then there's no question. Obviously, the replacement, the second kohen, will serve and will bring the korban tamin in the morning, and through that he will become the kohen gadol. But the Gemara asks, let's say the first kohen gadol becomes pasul after the korban tamid was already brought in the morning. So by then mechan chenoso, how are we mechanich the second kohen to be the kohen gadol? How are we going to induct him into the position of the kahuna gedola? And Rashi over here explains. Pshita ira b'kohen gadol psul b'yom HaKippurim kodem tamid shel shachar. If the kohen gadol becomes pasul before the korban tamid, mechan chenoso lazeh meshamish ta'achta b'tamid shel shachar. So then we'll be mechanich the second kohen as kohen gadol by having him bring the korban tamid in the morning. The idea is he can bring the Korban Tamid wearing all 8 garments of the Kohen Gadol. Through this, he'll be inducted into the position of Kohen Gadol before serving on the rest of the Avodah of Yom Kippur. But again, if this happens after the Korban Tamid, how are we mechanechim? Everything he does after that, meaning the Avodah of Yom Kippur, is done with just 4 garments. He's never going to be clear that he's the Kohen Gadol. He's just wearing the regular garments that any Kohen wears. That's what you wear when you do the Avodah of Yom Kippur. We need it to be that he's a clear Kohen Gadol when he's serving here on Yom Kippur. So how are we going to designate him as the Kohen Gadol once the Korban Tamid was already brought? So the Gemara answers, Amar Ravada Barava. Ravada Barava says, Be avnet. It's with the belt, meaning the belt that the Kohen Gadol wears in Yom Kippur is different than the belt that a regular Kohen wears. Rashi over here explains, Be avnet bos and daled begodim atzman yesh heker lakuna gedola. With those 4 garments, it is clear that he's the Kohen Gadol. Shavneito shel Kohen Gadol be'avodas Yom HaKippurim shel botzu, because the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur wore a belt that was made from linen. Kedechsiv, like the pasuk says, uve'avnet bad yachkor. That's what it says in the pasuk. V'zad achshav hayarog elavod b'shel kilayim. And until now, he used to wear a belt that was made of kilayim. It was made of wool and linen. So therefore, it is clear that this individual is now the Kohen Gadol by the wearing of the avnet. So the Gemara says, that works according to the one who says, Avneto shel Kohen Gadol, zeu Avneto shel Kohen Hedyot. That the Avnet of the Kohen Gadol is identical to the Avnet of a Kohen Hedyot. Rashi over here explains. Avneto shel Kohen Gadol shel kol yemos hashana. Meaning there's a mandamer that says the belt that the Kohen Gadol wears all the rest of the year, Haya shel kilayim, that was made out of kilayim, and zeu Avneto shel Kohen Hedyot, and that's the same as the Avnet of the Kohen Hedyot. Shein chiluk ba'avnetei, meaning the Kohen Hedyot also wore kilayim the entire year. So in other words, if you say that the Kohen Hedyot wore the same kind of avnet that a Kohen Gadol wears the rest of the year, meaning wears kilayim, so then ika heker b'Yom HaKippurim ba'avnet. Then there is a heker on Yom Kippur with this avnet, lefi she'avnet shel Kohen Gadol mishnane b'Yom HaKippurim, because the Kohen Gadol would change the avnet to be all linen. Leo shalbots on Yom Kippur would be all made of linen on Yom Kippur. In other words, the point of the Gemara is, according to the one who says that the avnet of a regular Kohen is kilayim, then this really is a heker, because now on Yom Kippur he's going to be wearing a linen avnet. That's good according to that man da'amar. But the Gemara says, Elu l'man da'amar avneto shel Kohen Gadol lo zeu avneto shel Kohen Hedyot. But according to the one who says that the avnet of the Kohen Gadol all year is not the same as the avnet as a Kohen Hedyot, meaning a Kohen Gadol all year wears kilayim, and a Kohen Hedyot wears linen the entire year. So then, on Yom Kippur, this new Kohen is wearing linen. It's going to be identical to what he wore all year. He always wore linen. So, Ma'ikal Amemar, what are you going to say according to that opinion? Rashi over here says, because the Hedyot wears linen all year. It comes out that what the regular Kohen wears all year, that's what the Kohen Gadol wears on Yom Kippur. So umay hekera kuna gadola ikal hai. Then there is no heker that this guy is the Kohen Gadol. So then you have a problem. So then again, the question is, according to this mandamer, what does this replacement Kohen do to show that he's the Kohen Gadol? So the Gemara says, Amar Abaya says, Lovesh Shmona, he puts on the 8 garments of the Kohen Gadol, Umahapech Betzinura, he takes like a fork, and he just turns over some of the limbs that are on the Mizbeach, and that will show that he is in fact the Kohen Gadol. Rashi over here says, Amar Abaya, Kodem Shiyaschal Avodas Hayom Shuba Begodim Hashavin Behedyot, before he starts the Avodah of Yom Kippur, which is just the garments that a regular Kohen wears, Lovesh Shmona Begodim, he'll just put on the 8 garments of the Kohen Gadol, V'yapoch B'Mizbeach Achitzon Echad Meivore Atam, and he'll just turn over some of the limbs on the Mizbeach, B'Mazlik Shal Barzel, the Kiruv Avodah, that's considered like an Avodah, Shememaher Le'Sachel Machmas Afichazu, because you're causing these limbs to burn a little more quickly. That's considered an Avodah. V'Avodah Hikid Rav Huna, this is an Avodah according to the opinion of Rav Huna, which we're about to quote, V'Nimsa Shenischanech L'Kuna Gedola Kodem L'Chein. This will be the Chinuch into the position of the Kuna Gedola, Uchid Rav Huna. The Gemara says this follows the opinion of Rav Huna. Diyamar Rav Huna, because Rav Huna says, Zar Shahapach Betzinora Chayev Misa. If a non-Kohen were to turn over some of the limbs on the Mizbeach with a fork, he'd be Chayev Misa, meaning it is in fact an Avodah, and therefore this can be Mechanechim into the Kuna Gedola. For Rav Papa Amar, the Gemara says, Rav Papa says, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis.